And we're back with me, Johnny McMurray, on the On The Spot Football Podcast for yet another fantastic guest. This man has been a ball boy from the age of 7 at one of Belfast's biggest clubs and made his way right through the rankings and ended up as a VP at FIFA. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jim Boyce.
It's a pleasure to be here, Johnny, and thank you for asking me.
Jim, thank you. I know we've been in contact for the last couple of days. We've had plenty of chats, plenty of conversations, but it's an absolute pleasure to see you again. It's been a while.
Well, it has been a while. And I remember you playing for Cliftonville. And I remember you getting sent off playing for the youth team in the Youth Cup.
Don't mention that. My mother's here.
Right?
Jim, don't want to talk about
Down at Lockgall.
yes.
Is that right?
Don't want to. It was probably.
And I said, that fella's going to
days.
be an absolute star at Cliftonville Football Club. And I genuinely meant that. You can maybe tell me when we're having a chat why you ever left the place, but anyway, Johnny, you've had a nice career. Things have worked out for you, and as I say, I'm very sorry that you had to finish your career because of injury. I was disappointed when I heard that.
Well, we can always potentially go back, Jim, but
well,
we enjoy what we're doing at the minute.
Well, that's,
you know what I mean?
That's the most important thing.
This is
There's always something else.
But no, listen, again, thank you so much for... I know it's taking time out of your day. You have a busy schedule at the minute, and it means the world to me that you've made the trip.
No problem.
But one thing I have to talk about, Jim, is where's the big brown coat?
It's in the house. It's a wee bit early yet. I'll tell you this. When I come out of the house this morning, the temperature in the car showed 7 degrees, and I thought, I think this coat needs to come back out.
It might be time.
Do you want to hear the story behind the coat?
I would love to know, because it's the most famous coat that I've seen.
Oh, everybody, John, they call him to John Massey. I tell you, absolutely true story. When I was president of the IFA, I think it was 2003, we were playing in Germany. And there was this big store in Germany, and I happened to go in and was browsing about. And I say, seriously, this sheepskin coat, £1,000 down to £330, which was, at that time, 330 was a lot of money, but it was a lovely coat. But I didn't buy it. I looked at it and I thought, God, I'd love that coat. So I went out and I went in the next day to the same store. It's absolutely true. And I looked at that and the coat was still there. And the reduction was it was unbelievable. But again, I walked out of the store and we played Germany. We were leaving the next day to go home at 3 o'clock or something. And I thought, I'm going to regret it if I don't buy that coat.
Having dreams about that coat.
And I went in and I thought, the pot with it. We'll find it from somewhere. And people have slagged me about the coat ever since. But I'll tell you, in the winters they will have, sometimes it's nice and put it on. So
you know what? It looks...
it's been cleaned again. I'll tell you.
A sleeping bag.
It's like new. No, but it was a really good quality sheepskin coat. And they've got it at that price. So I don't ever regret buying it.
When you think about the value for money and the amount of times you've worked, sure, you've made your money back.
I'll still be wearing it, Johnny.
You've made your money back.
I'll still be wearing it.
Well, listen, what I want to do is I want to start off, and the way we usually start off a podcast is by bringing the guests right back to how it all started. Now, you're a big Cliftonville man. You have been, and everybody knows you for being a huge Cliftonville.
75 years but this year, Johnny.
75 years is a wild long time.
It's a wild long time.
Supporting the club. But you look fabulous.
Well, I'll tell you honestly how it started. I lived in the Old Park Road. My grandfather, for his sins, don't ask me why, was a Linfield supporter.
Right, okay.
And he took me to the odd Linfield match. But I'll be honest, I didn't really enjoy it. And I had a friend called Wilson Lamb who lived down the road from me. And I said, let's go down to Cliftonville. They were playing Korean. I remembered as if it was yesterday. I think Ozzie Bailey was actually in goals. That's how long ago it was. And I went anyway, and I really enjoyed that match at Cliftonville. And I started going down, and I started getting lifted over the stile as I did at that time. I was 7 years of age. But I was also a boy member of Cliftonville Cricket Club, because cricket was my second love, which unfortunately I had to stop because of a serious injury that I had, Johnny.
Okay.
So the groundsman at Cliftonville Football Club was actually the groundsman at Cliftonville Cricket Club. John Biggs, dead and gone a long time. So he said to me, the boys, like the mini cricket, he said to me, Jim, I've seen you over at the football matches. He says, I need a ball, boy. He says, that ball keeps going into the bowling green or into the water. He said, I need somebody to come and get it. He said, would you? I said, what? He said, I would love you to become ball boy. I said, yeah. He said, we were playing, I can't remember who it was, the following Saturday. And the rest history. So I started off playing ball boy at Cliftonville Football Club. Then I obviously joined the Junior Supporters Club. Then I was asked, and we turned professional in I want to try and get this date right for you, John. I think it was 1973 when the club changed their articles, because at that time I remember going to train to Derry or going to Windsor and seeing the 10-4, 8-1. And I mean, it was, I tell you a true story, I joined Ballymena Cricket Club in 1971. And I went and listened to the radio during the break in the cricket. And we beat Bangor. Remember this, we beat Bangor 2-0. And I think I'm right in saying to you that was the first time in 20 years that Cliftonville didn't finish bottom of the league and didn't have to apply for re-election.
Okay.
You know, so I mean, I was there in the bad days as well, the tough days. But anyway, basically what happened is, say, I joined the committee, and in 1978 I became vice chairman. Marvellous that we, under Jackie Hutton, who was tremendous for the club, we won the cup for the first time, as you know, in 79. Then Jimmy Brown became manager, and we won the Gold Cup in 82. We beat Linfield in the final. And I'll tell you a true story about that. If Jimmy's listening, he may not like this, but we played Crusaders on the Saturday before the final. And John Platt, who scored goals for fun for Cliftonville, you probably heard the name. I think Jimmy took a head stagger, but he decided he would play John Platt as centre half this day against Crusaders. And Crusaders beat us 3-0. But I was going, oh, well, all the managers at Cliftonville, to be honest with you, and that have been a crack on them. And I remember speaking to Jimmy. I said, Jimmy, what are you thinking about? I said, we'll play Linfield on Tuesday night in the Gold Cup. I said, you can't play John Platt at centre half. Get him up centre forward. If he scores, he scores, but at least he'll be there. And sure enough, Platt played centre forward, but beat Linfield 3-1, so won the Gold Cup. And when we came back to the club, Jimmy Brown had his car stolen, so he ended up with Jimmy in the police station trying to retrieve his car. Somebody had whipped his car from the club. But then, as I say, after that, I was vice chairman for 10.5 years, and then I was vice chairman from 78 to 88. Then I became chairman in 88, and was chairman for 10.5 years, and you know, it was just a dream to think that Cliftonville would win the league under Marty Quinn. I mean, Marty was a super fella, and I had an awful job when Frankie Parks decided to quit, persuading Marty to take a job. Thankfully he did. And it's a funny how things can happen, because we won the 6-a-sides at the Balmoral Ice Bowl. And I remember saying to Marty, look, this is only the 6-a-sides, but it could be the start of something. And the following year we won the County Antrim Shield. The year after that we won, I think it was a Sun Life Gold Cup. Mm-hmm. And then the year after that we won the league. And Marty and I had a very close relationship. You know, would have gone. And Marty could have, like every other manager, he had his ups and he had his downs. And at times he would have been down. But we were very good friends. And I remember ringing him. We were doing well in the league. And I remember ringing him this Sunday and saying, Marty, one time I'll have a pint down in the Edenmore Hotel, which no longer exists. And we were just having a chat, and I said, Marty, you know something, I think we can win this league. He says, are you serious? I said, yeah, we're up there, we're doing well, but we need one more player. And he looked at me. He said, what do you think we need? I said, we need a striker, we need somebody to put the ball in the net. Because we're winning most of the matches 1-0. He says, well, I can get you something. And it was Harry McCourt, who's Paddy's brother. Harry McCourt played for Ards. He said, it's going to cost us $4,000. But he said, I can get Harry McCourt. I said, go and get him. And Harry McCourt made a heck of a difference when he came. And we ended up winning the league, which was just unbelievable.
Well, one of the things is I actually had Tim McCann on at the time. And Tim spoke quite highly about the time he was under that sort of regiment. And that was the first trophy that they had. Now, all this to me was very different. I'd never heard of the 6-a-sides, and I actually went home and ended up watching the clips, and it's very well documented on YouTube, and it's fantastic. It was an indoor.
Well, that's really how it started.
And that was exactly how it started.
And we won a trophy under Marty every year that he was manager. And then what happened, I had actually said to the committee at Cliftonville Football Club, because I was then president of the Irish Football Association, Johnny, there were too many contrasting things between the IFA and Cliftonville. I was never going to leave Cliftonville, but I did say to them, look, I'm doing one more year. It's time that somebody else took over as chairman. And I remember this really, really well. We played Chimney Corner in the Wilkinson Sword League Cup. And we lost 1-0. And I'll be honest, I thought, what in the name of goodness are we going to do this year? You know, we were dreadful. Lawrence Stitt was manager of Chimney Corner at that time. And an absolutely true story, as I said, Marty and I had a very good relationship. And he came in, and Gary Sliney, who I got on very well with, we had quite a few players from down south played for us at that time. Gary Sliney was very, very good the year before playing for Cliftonville, but he wouldn't sign the form. And he says, Jim, I can't get Sliney. He wants more money. Now, he was on £100 a week plus a tenner for a train fare. True story, Johnny. And Marty says, Jim, will you go up and speak to him? Well, I said, aye, certainly. So we went out. I don't know if you know Chimney Corner or not, but there was like a wee bench thing. Sliney comes out and I says, what's this I hear about you wanting to leave Cliftonville? Jimmy, I don't want to leave Cliftonville. I'm very happy at Cliftonville. I said, but he says, I need more money. I said, like, hold on a minute. I said, you're on £100 a week and £10 for your train fare. I said, I can tell. No, I need 150. I says, well, we'll shake hands now. Do you want to go? He says, no, I don't want to go with you. I said, well, you forget about the 150. No chance. I said, but tell you what, I'll get you 120 and I'll still give you your £10 for train fare. But he says, well, either shake hands now and agree or else we'll call it quits. Jimmy, go and tell Marty to bring me the form and I'll sign the form. So I goes in, Marty sat there the rest of the night. I said, Marty, you better go out and get that form and get Sliney signed as soon as you can. But this was a sort of relationship, and I enjoyed it. There was a lot of difficult days. The troubles were horrendous, as you know, Johnny, at that time at Cliftonville, but I was never going to go anywhere else.
Talk to me about being the vice president. So at what age did you become the VP at Cliftonville, and also at the stage, what made you want to become a president at the club?
Well, basically what happened was when I finished as chairman of Cliftonville Football Club, Gerard Lawler, who did a super job, Gerard took over as chairman. And I was asked would I become president of Cliftonville Football Club. So remember, I went from ball boy to being on the committee, to being vice chairman, to being chairman, and then Gerard asked me would I become president. Mm-hmm. Which was a great honour. So I was president of, I was still at the IFA at the time, but I was president of the Cliftonville Football Club. But they have a term of office of 4 years.
Okay.
And Gerard wanted me to still have a major connection with the club. So at the AGM, they made me patron of the club, which I am to this day.
Okay.
So that's
really deserved.
That's really the story of Cliftonville Football Club.
The IFA becomes obviously your wrecking ground near enough. You go in there, you become the
Yeah, I was there, and I suppose I was very fortunate. I was president of the Irish Football Association for 12 years. They were on their knees in many ways at times. We didn't have an under-21 team. And I thought, look, if we don't have an under-21 team playing in Europe, we're never going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I remember absolutely true, I went over and I saw David Richards at that time, who was the chairman of the Premier League in England. But we'd got to know each other through meetings because I was president of the IFA. Very, very lovely man. He was also chairman of Sheffield Wednesday. And I went and I saw him and explained the situation. And I said, David, unless we have an under-21 team, in my opinion, playing in Europe, we're never going to progress. But we have no money. He says, Jim, how much do you need? So I had already spoken to David Bowen about this, and he reckoned it was going to be about £170,000 at that time. I remember this was 1998, to put the under-21 team into Europe. And I said, well, David, 200,000 would be superb. He said, leave this with me. So lo and behold, the next day, I got a telephone call saying, I have agreed this with the Premier League board, and he said the IFA would be paid 200,000 to go and put an under-21 team in the European under-21 championships. And what happened was we used 170,000 of that, Johnny, for the under-21s, but I was able, which pleased me, to give the women's, who at that time had to buy their own boots, had to buy their own jersey. I mean, it was just, as you know, there was maybe 20 or 30 people. They had no money, so they got 10,000. The boys' clubs, who run the Milk Cup at that time, I was able to get them 10,000, and the schools FA got 10,000. So that's, and to this day, when I finished as president of the IFA was 2007. I'd done 12 years. And I remember somebody coming and saying to me, Jim, is there any chance that this money that we get for the IFA could continue? I think it was a chap from the boys' clubs. And I spoke to, he was then Sir David Richards. He became Sir David Richards. And he says, again, leave this with me. I said, I don't want any sour grapes here, but it would be nice if you were able to continue to help them. Lo and behold, I got a phone call from Gerard Lawler saying, I was over in London. As you know, Gerard is now Chief Executive of NIFL. And he said I was trying to get some money for the clubs. And I was told, what are you talking about, sir? He says, we give 250,000 a year, which Gerard didn't know about. And Gerard rang me. I said, I don't know anything about this. I said, I told him the story about when I finished with President of the IFA, hoping that they would continue to help the IFA.
Yeah.
So I rang Sir David Richards, who to this day we're very good friends, and he's coming to the dinner, which I'll talk to you about later. And he says, Chip, do you know anything about this? He said, I had somebody come over and saw me and asked me, could we possibly... And he said, I have authorised that they get 250,000 a year up until 2027, which is, I think, in a couple of years' time. And I said, no, honestly, Sir David, I did not know. Nobody ever mentioned this to me. So I said, they're still getting that money. He said, yeah, they're still getting that money. And I said, well, thank you very much.
It's incredible to think that you've been able to set these things up in a position, but how does a young Cliftonville fan who makes his way through Cliftonville at the time become the president of the Irish Football Association?
Well, it became from Cliftonville. I went to the Irish League. Then I went to the County Antrim Football Association.
Okay.
And the County Antrim Football Association have representatives on the council of the IFA. So the County Antrim Football Association nominated me for one of the positions on the council of the Irish Football Association.
Okay.
And then Harry Kevin, who, as you know, had been president for a long, long time, was retiring. Sammy Walker, who was 80, I think Sammy was 80 or 81 at the time, and rightly so, they gave him the honour of becoming president of the IFA. And I was asked to stand for the vice presidency of the Irish Football Association. And this would have been 1993. And there's three of us, and I won the vote to become vice president. I never asked anybody for a vote in my life, but I became vice president. And then Sammy, 2 years later, retired. I think the age was starting, obviously, to hit him quite hard. And in 1995, I became president, which I held for 12 years. And hopefully, as I say, I was able to... I mean, the thing that pleases me is I started getting friendly, because to me, life is all about people. It's all about talking to people. And I was lucky in my UEFA capacity at that time. I met presidents of other associations, and I remember speaking to Claude Siboney, who was the president of the French Football Association. And I said, wouldn't it be wonderful if France... Because I think the Good Friday Agreement and the ceasefire had just come in a few years back, and it was very hard to attract major teams to Northern Ireland. And France were the first team to come to Northern Ireland and play after they won the World Cup. And then Spain. I mean, this is an absolutely true story. I became very, very friendly with the president of the Spanish FA. They commanded a fee of €500,000 to just go out and play. Again, I had the same sort of conversation with him, and he brought Spain to Belfast and didn't charge us a penny.
Right, okay.
Didn't charge us a penny. He says, all I want, Jim, is I need a television signal so that the match can go back to Spain. He says, you arrange that for me. There'll be no fee. Did the same in Portugal, and I was very lucky that I had this type of relationship with people, and thankfully, as I say, I enjoyed the 12 years. There was difficult times amongst it as well, but then it all ended, and from then, obviously, through UEFA, FIFA had a British vice presidency.
Okay.
And there's a chap, I'm trying to remember his name, the English chairman at that time wanted the FIFA vice presidency. And people wanted me to do it. So he wanted it there and then and wouldn't agree to anything else. So the president of the Scottish Football Association, he made a proposal and said, look, this can't go on. Geoffrey Thompson was his name. Geoffrey Thompson let him do the first 4 years, which was 2007 to 2011. And Jim do the 4 years after that, 2011 to 2015. So that's how the FIFA vice presidency came about. And there was some very difficult, because as you know, FIFA were, having some bad publicity is probably an understatement.
Yeah.
But I was always open and honest. I had a great relationship with the media, and if they asked me a question, I gave them an honest answer. And I will tell you an absolutely true story. I said, when I finished at FIFA, I said, Sepp Blatter and I, we had a pretty good, because I had known him, remember, Johnny, since 1993, when the international board met. And he was secretary of FIFA at that time. He wasn't president, so we'd known each other. And I said, these guys who are supposedly doing wrong, they shouldn't be there. They should have been thrown out. And I remember this story very, very, very vividly. I was chairman of the referees committee for the World Cup in Brazil, but I was finishing, and I was out at FIFA because the Women's World Cup was on the following year in Canada, and I was still technically chairman, although I was finishing, I think, a week or 10 days after it'd been out, meeting the women referees. And I got a phone call from Blatter's secretary, and she said, President Jim saw you were at FIFA today. He would like to see you. And I said, look, Marta, I'm in the car, literally 10 minutes away. Do you want me to come back? And she said, well, no, he'd like to see you. So I went back. And this man, he was 81 at the time, I walked in, he held his hand out, just like that. And he just said, I want to thank you. And I said, thank me for what? He says, you've been accredited to country, but he said, you've been accredited to FIFA. He said, I haven't always agreed with all you've said, but he said, you've been very open, you've been very honest about it. And he said, I would love you to do another 4 years. And I said, President, thank you, but no, I've family problems at home, and I think I've had my day. And I said, thank you for your... And he said, would you like a cup of coffee? And I said, yeah, fine. And I said, can I say something to you, Sepp? Because I called him Sepp. We knew each other very well. I said, this organisation are taking terrible, terrible abuse, terrible flack, and you are taking most of the flack which is going on here. I said, my opinion is, because no one ever accused Sepp Blatter of taking a penny. He was never ever accused of anything, of any financial irregularities. But he for some reason appeared to turn a blind eye to certain things that were happening in other federations like Africa and the Caribbean and places like this. And I remember saying to him, you're the person that's taken most of the abuse, most of the comments in the paper. And I said, if I could say something to you, some of these people should have been out of this organisation years ago, but unfortunately they weren't. And you are taking most of the abuse when it wasn't your fault that other people should have gone. And he looked at me straight in the face and he said, perhaps you're right. And I thought, you've said enough.
Why do you think at that stage he wouldn't use the power to people?
This is my honest reasons about Blatter, because he did look, FIFA was his life. He lived in the place. He just was his life. He wanted to make sure that he retained the presidency of FIFA. Now, guys from the Caribbean like Warner, who was caught in 2006 blatantly selling tickets on the black market at the World Cup in Germany.
Yeah.
He got a slap on the wrist and got fined £10,000. He should have been out the door.
Yeah.
But he was in control of that region where there was 48 votes for when the presidency came up.
Okay.
So you're asking me why. I think he turned a blind eye to certain of these people. Europeans weren't involved in it, but I think he turned a blind eye because he knew that these people would
Guarantee him as his presidency or the next election.
That's my honest opinion.
But then does that not jeopardise the whole concept of football?
Yeah.
Because he's taken the presidency on to try and progress football. FIFA's the governing body.
Exactly.
And
And I think in many, don't get me wrong, Johnny, in many ways, you know, he did many good things, but there were also a lot of other things. For example, I wasn't involved at the time, but I mean, this Russian thing, this Qatar thing, you know, people, and as I say, reputedly we're getting bribes, we're getting this. I can honestly say nobody ever approached me about anything in my life, nor would they have, because I just wouldn't have been involved in that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But maybe I was lucky that I did the second 4 years and not the first 4 years, because it was really the first 4 years that most of the problems were rising with the Qatar thing and with the Russian thing.
Well, I think if people are listening to the podcast, probably say you were unlucky because you could have had a load of money in the bank, a couple of nice watches. You could have been back in the Cliftonville Road watching Cliftonville on a Saturday.
Well,
and you could have had plenty more of those big black coats.
I can assure you, Johnny, it would never have happened to me because I just am that type of person, and I wouldn't have allowed it to happen.
FIFA's a very
I
interesting...
can't really comment on what went on because I wasn't there at the time, but obviously there was something, and those people, as I say, should have been out long before. But the incredible thing, Johnny, whenever I became Vice President of FIFA, there was 50% of those, of that executive committee, went within 2 years.
Okay. Kind of sums it all up, doesn't it?
Went within 2 years.
One of the big things about FIFA that interests me, obviously, is the whole catastrophic stuff around just before you came in. And it's widely documented.
Yep.
But I want to get into that, but I don't want to get into it just right now because Northern Ireland and the Irish Football Association is thriving at the minute. That's probably the best way to say it. And you were probably one of the first people to kind of kickstart that off. But in terms of you being at the Irish Football Association back then, what sort of problems would you have faced? As you've talked about the 21s, there's no 21s team, and there obviously wasn't much money about the association. But
there was really virtually no money about it. The problems were obviously, they were mainly, but people who know me, Johnny, and I would tell you an absolutely true story. Sectarianism never played any part in my life.
okay,
Thankfully, I was brought up to treat people, as my father said, the way you would want to be treated, and I tried to do that. So I never had a problem. I lived on the Old Park Road. 2 people up from me were Roman Catholics. The people across the road were Roman. They came into my house, into my father's house, had a bit of crack. So I was lucky that I was brought up never to get involved in any of that stuff. So there was a terrible, and I'll be honest with you, Johnny, there was a terrible problem at a time at Windsor Park when some of the players who played took abuse that they should never, ever have taken.
okay,
So I was asked to go to a meeting of the Northern Ireland supporters in the Wellington Park Hotel. And this is an absolutely true story. And at that time, the crowds were down to just under 5,000. I mean, it was
a low point.
it was real low, yep. And Jackie Fullerton, who to this day is probably one of my best friends, Jackie was comparing this meeting. And he came out to me and he says, Jim, I think you're in for a rough time here tonight. This was about 2001, 2002. And I says, look, Jackie, I'm here. I've come to meet them. I said, but would you do me a favour? Would you let me get in first? Because I want to say something before they say anything. He says, of course I will. So he introduced me, and I remember opening the meeting, and the place was packed. Wellington Park Hotel was packed. And I said, look, before anybody starts asking me questions, and I will answer them as honestly as I can. I will not change as a person. I said, so as far as religion is concerned, as far as sectarianism is concerned, it's deplorable what's happening at the minute at Windsor Park. And until you change the attitude towards, I said, if you were a Roman Catholic player and you're wearing a green jersey out there and you're listening to some of the chanting that's going on, would you want to play? I said, because I wouldn't. So I said, before we get into question and answer, I said, I just want to make it clear that this has to change, and I hope it will change. Now, I won't go into some of the questions that were asked at it, but I will say this, Johnny. At the end of that meeting, these 5 guys approached me, and I thought, oh, what have I done here? What have I said? Absolutely true story. And this guy held out his hand. And I don't usually use a bad word, but he says, fair effing play to you, Boyce. He says, at least you're man enough to come and meet us here tonight. We'll sort it out, and we will sort it out. We mightn't have it done in the next match, but we'll sort it out because you're 100% correct. And I think now, to be very fair, even as a Cliftonville who wanted a ticket for a match, I think things have changed an awful lot. I think you can see now with Michael, who's a great fellow, what he's done to the team. Mm-hmm. I think, we were losing a lot of players to the Republic of Ireland for probably the reasons that I'm explaining. Now there's very few. You're still the odd one. And I have always said, look, I don't have a problem with this. If somebody feels that they don't want to play, that they want to, they make the choice and they are able to make that choice. What I do feel strongly about, Johnny, is the IFA put a lot of money into developing, from the schools right up. The academies, Jim Magilton, a lot of people that are working hard in the IFA, and I think we're producing some super kids at the minute. A lot of them are now staying in Northern Ireland. Look at Conor Bradley, isn't he fantastic? I mean, he's only one of them, but there's a lot of them are now seem happy enough. They're playing for Northern Ireland, and we're now producing the goods. And we still lose the odd one, but it's nothing like what it was. And I'm very pleased that has happened.
Do you think that the reason why the association is further on is because of the processes that you helped implement back then?
I would like to think, Johnny, that it did hopefully play a big part on it. I'm not saying it's because of me, but there were other people got involved. One of the people that I mentioned to you, the next few matches at Windsor Park brought a hooter, one of these loud hooters. Okay. And if somebody started coming out with something that they shouldn't have come out, the hooter went off, and you could see the crowd. You could see it just changing. And now, as I say, the atmosphere is terrific, and thankfully
it's very inclusive.
Thankfully, that's the way it should be.
And I think with success allows people to join in, doesn't it? And
yes.
Recent successes has been great for
I'll give you an example. I'll give you a prime example. Ronan Hill, Rory and I are good friends. Rory plays for Cliftonville. Ronan has changed his allegiance and got clearance to play for him. Now, he I think because maybe he didn't get the move from Ross County that Michael was hoping that he would have to try to better his career. Mm-hmm. But he came on the pitch at Windsor Park. I can't remember the team, and he got a great reception coming on the pitch from absolutely great reception. And I'm hoping that he still will be able to come and get back into that team again, because maybe this is me and my Cliftonville bias showing, but I'll be honest with you. I think some of the chances that we have missed in some of those games, I think Ronan would have scored them.
Ronan's a selfish goal scorer. He is a complete goal scorer. To me, he'll
score goals at whatever level he plays at.
Absolutely.
I think the fact probably that Michael is looking at is Michael likes players playing in a higher division. Yep. Ross County, who he scored 18 goals for, he was brought into the squad, but he stayed with Ross County. He hasn't moved away, and I think probably the manager would like him to get a move to see how he would do at a bigger club, but I still hope he's part of it.
Yeah, well, I kind of see the idea of that being probably the best solution. But when you have somebody who's capable of scoring a goal from thinner, and Ronan's done it
Look at the Irish Cup final, my goodness.
Exactly. So when you've got somebody like that in your arsenal, regardless, it's beneficial to the team to have somebody like running the team.
It is.
And as you say, he's a fantastic kid with a serious eye for goal.
I think so, and hopefully it'll up along he's back in the squad again.
Hopefully, as I say, hopefully I've played with him. He's a fantastic kid.
I know you did.
But yes.
Yeah, you played with him at Larne, didn't you?
Played with him at Larne, yes. Yeah. And it was great.
He's one of these people who, he's an eye for scoring. I mean, the goal he scored against Linfield, forget about the one where he ran we'll never forget that dead eye. But
the arms were adjacent at that stage.
The second goal, what a strike. I mean, he cut in and he just unleashed it, and no keeper in the world would have stopped it. And
that's the thing. I think
he has that in his locker. Yeah,
at certain times, I think people
he has that in his
kind of tend to centre forwards tend to maybe come away from being as ruthless. Ronan just wants to score.
I mean, talk about Cliftonville at the minute, and talk about Ronan Hale. We're transgressing a wee bit, Johnny. But when you think of the players over the last 2 years that Jim has lost, Shea Kearney. I was talking to Neil Lennon last Thursday night at the under-21 game against Germany, and I think he's got a gem in Kearney, because Kearney can defend, but he can also attack. And Clifton are missing players like him, with Sam Ashford, Ben Wilson, Ronan. I could go on and on. Ronan Doherty, Chrissy Gallagher. Jim has lost an awful lot of players, and we're still, let's put it this way, we're still competing, but
he's a detriment to his own success,
to get to that higher level. Well, yes, he is. And
he's done that well as players have been that successful that they had to move. You can't really hold these people, especially when they're getting moved.
Let's be honest, in the period he's been at Cliftonville, we've won the Irish Cup for the first time since '79. We won the League Cup last year. We've been in Europe twice, and we lost on a penalty shootout. There was just a lottery against Dungannon. So, I think people will have to see that he's trying to build a team again. And I tell you, I watched them playing on Tuesday night against Linfield, and we had 3 kids on, all under the age of 20. And all 3 of them did really well. So the academy's doing very well under Mark Smith as well. And this is your future as well. This takeover, I don't know what's going to happen. We just have to wait and see. But
well, now that you've brought it up, I feel like we have to talk about it. I wasn't probably going to bring it up because I kind of forgot about it. But in terms of the takeover at Cliftonville, obviously there's been a substantial amount of financial gain around the league, depending on different teams taking big money in, and that's fantastic. But Cliftonville needs it. Cliftonville, even the stand, the redevelopment,
Johnny,
it's all very much needed.
We absolutely need it. Now, I'm being honest with you. I have not got involved. I have too many friends at Cliftonville all around, so I'm not getting involved in what's happening at the moment, and I have no intention of doing so. All I would say is this, that my understanding of the situation, and I was a member who voted for TIG to go ahead and to buy it. I was sad to see the club changing hands, but I'm a realist. If the $2.5 million that was promised, because if we get the money, and there's now problems, with Crusaders and Derry lodging appeals, we have to find 8% of that, and we have to find 8% of whatever we get and put it down right away. So the members voted on the 3rd of April for this takeover to take place. I'm talking to you, and I think what's today, the 24th or something of October.
October, yep.
It's still going on. There's still talks between legal people that I can honestly say I know nothing about, and I don't want to know anything about. But look, one way or the other, it has to be sorted out. It has to be either put to bed or it has to go ahead. And as you say, I think and hope that it can be sorted out.
Do you think that it's something that the fans are 100% behind at Cliftonville?
They appear to be. They appear to be, and they appear to be of the opinion at the minute that they have not been kept aware of why it hasn't taken place. Okay. I've sitting here being honest with you, I don't know why it hasn't taken place. So they're a bit frustrated because they feel they see the money that's coming into other clubs. I mean, I made a comment earlier. We lost last week. to Larne. Now, I have to say Larne played very well. Larne are still a good side. They're a full-time professional side. And I made a comment to a guy who was a bit critical with things. I said, like, hold on, man. We're shopping in Tesco's. They're shopping in Harrods. Let's be blunt about it. Let's give credit where credit's due, and let's wait and see what happens.
I think that I would agree. I think that if you were able to put Jim in a position where he's very comfortable being full-time, he's done it for a long, long time and been very successful in England, and you're going to put a man
I tell you something, sorry, John.
back into that
Sorry to
position.
interrupt you. I tell you something about Jim. David Sheepshanks, who was chairman of Ipswich. David and I were very good friends, again through the FA and through meetings. David Sheepshanks told me that he was the best manager, in his opinion, that Ipswich Town have had for years. And the thing about Jim, he knows players, he knows the contacts, he's worked and done a superb job in the IFA and the academy structure. So, you know, Cliftonville, in my opinion, are very lucky that they have somebody like Jim that has contacts and knows people. But I'm being honest with you, Johnny, him and I are very good friends, and we've talked about things, and some of the money that some of the players are asking, I mean, it's incredible is the only word to describe it. Yeah. And as Jim said, a lot of them are not worth that sort of money. Mm-hmm. I know it's a market, but I think he's the sort of manager that he's always said he'll put Cliftonville first. Yeah. And he's not just going to go and throw money away for the sake of doing it. So I hope we can get this thing resolved.
Well, Jim coming into Cliftonville at the time when he did sign was a huge talking point in the league. Obviously, I think it's beneficial to have big characters such as Jim in the position that he's in.
Of course it is.
How much influence did you have with a good friend like Jim?
To be fair, I talked to him. Jim and I presented him with his 50th cap for Northern Ireland. He's a great character. He's spoken at one of the lunches which we have from time to time and did it willingly. There were other people that obviously in the board of Cliftonville. I was more on the sideline, so I was more talking to him like as a friend more than anything else. But I'll be honest with you, I would like to think that Jim and I have a very, very good relationship, and I hope he'll be at Cliftonville for a long time to come.
Yeah. Me too. I think his characters will.
I hope he'll be at Cliftonville for a long time to come.
Jim, one of the things I want to talk to you about when you had your time at FIFA was obviously the big money scandals. But there was watch scandals, and supposedly people were getting Rolexes and Cartiers and all that. So tell me, which one did you actually...
Johnny, I will give you the absolute true story of this watch. And there were two people from the Irish Football Association, David Martin, who was president at the time, and Patrick Nelson, who was the chief executive. FIFA had a lounge. And I invited them up for a cup of coffee or a drink to the lounge. And when I was sitting talking to them, this chap came over with a what I thought was a goodie bag, a brown bag. I never honestly opened the bag. And I came home because my wife at that time was starting to have slight signs of dementia, and I didn't want to be away for 6 weeks.
Okay.
So I came home knowing that I was going back for the quarter-finals, semi-finals. As chairman of the referees committee, I had to do that.
Okay.
So that would have been roughly June. About August or September, I'm in the house, and my wife had never heard me as angry in my life because I'm not that type of person. But I get a phone call from a girl from the Times. And her words were, "Mr. Boyce, we understand that you got a Hublot watch when you were in Brazil." And I said, "I can assure you, I never got any Hublot watch in Brazil. I don't know any." "Well, other people got it." I said, "Well, look, maybe they did, but I certainly did not get a Hublot watch in Brazil." So she quoted me on this. That was fair enough. About 3 weeks later, I get the same girl on the phone. Are you absolutely sure that you did not get... And by the way, it wasn't a Hublot watch. She mentioned Parley Army or something like this.
Okay.
I said, look, I've told you before, I have had no watch from Brazil. Now, I'm not telling lies about it. You can write whatever you like, but I did not get a watch. The weather was lovely, and I was sitting with my wife out in the back garden. And I honestly have got a couple of bags, like, the old Adidas bag. Because when I got things like that, if I had to speak at a dinner or for a charity, or young Jared Lawler, Jared and I are very good friends, that's his young son, I would have brought things home and I would have given him souvenirs.
Okay.
And I went out, I don't know what made me, but I went out to this bag that I had in the garage. And sure enough, there was this brown bag that I had thrown in when I came home from Brazil. Opened it up. What was in it? But a watch.
Okay, right.
Now, I'll be honest. I thought, my God, what do I do here? So I had her number, obviously, in the phone, the Times, and I rang back. And I said, look, I told her the story. I said, you can believe me or believe me not. But I said, yes, I have found a watch in the bag. It had the Brazilian, it was a big watch, but to be honest with you, to look at it, you would have thought it was a souvenir. But it was gold. I didn't know it was gold, right? And she said to me, well, at least you're honest enough to ring me back. I said, look, I'm ringing FIFA now as soon as I finish with you. And I said, I will return that watch right away. I said, it's not a problem. I did not know that I had the watch. She said, well, thank you, at least you've been honest. And that's an honest story. I returned the watch. I had got a receipt from FIFA saying that, they had received the watch back from me. Now, I can take fun, Johnny. Anybody knows me knows that doesn't bother me. I would have went to Cliftonville and the lads who know me well would have shared it. But if you told the referee there's only 5 minutes left, and that was fun. I can accept all that. But there were some vicious comments about... I don't get social media, but people showed me some of the vicious comments that were made by some people, as if I had stolen a watch or taken a watch, that, to be honest with you, I didn't even know that I had.
Yeah.
And that's the story of the watch. It went back to FIFA, but it just shows you how media can make things out, and it can affect people. But I got really angry with her, and my wife actually came in to me and said, she saw the state that it was in. I told her what happened, and I said, Hazel, I just can't believe it, this has happened, but I haven't got any of it. But fortunately, all's well, it ended well. Everybody apparently who got these watches had to return them then to FIFA. The strange thing about it, Platini was one of the people. There were several people said, we're not returning them because this is an insult to the Brazilian FA. Do you see? Yeah. This was not in any way a FIFA watch. The Brazilian FA apparently, Johnny, had been sponsored by this watch company.
Okay.
And as part of the sponsorship, they gave them so many watches to give to presidents of associations who were playing in the World Cup or chief. Yes, and that's how it happened. And there were a few people who said, why should we give this? Because it had nothing to do with FIFA. But the point about it was FIFA decided that everybody who got the watch should return it. I was quite happy to return it. But I was also quite happy when the thing was put to bed. But to this day, people still banter me about it. I can
never going to lose that.
No, and I can accept that because it still happened.
Yeah,
that side of it, I don't have a problem with. I do have a problem when people get vicious about it for something that I had no control over.
Was it expensive?
Oh, this is what I was going to tell you, Johnny. That when I took it back to FIFA, to Zurich, the chap who would pick me up in the car to take me to the meetings, he knew a jeweller very well in Zurich.
Okay.
And I gave him this, told him I was taking it back. And he says, before you take it back, I want to call in and show this watch to this
sort of
jeweller. Yes.
Okay.
And apparently it was valued at about 16,000, not 24. But it was, yeah. It was. And to be honest with you, when you looked at it, you would have thought it was something that was
Aye,
A
too big.
souvenir for yeah.
Not nice enough for you, Jim.
Well, I don't know about that, but
I wish I had left. If that was me, I wish it was stuck in the
I
bag.
should have given you the one.
Should have given it to me. I'd have wore it. Could have been the size of my head. I'd have still wore it. I want to take you back. So, you were at the IFA for quite a long time.
12 years.
Okay. At this stage, as we've touched on, the Troubles was probably at its peak. And you went through quite a few scenarios, which were very dodgy, should we say. Talk to me.
Johnny, if I talked about all the scenarios that you mentioned to me, this podcast would take 2 days,
Okay.
an hour. But no, there were some horrendous events. I mean, I remember we played Celtic, and the ground was packed. It was a joyous occasion for one, and suddenly the police at that time they burst into the ground. All hell was let loose. Fires were lit. Parts of this, and the match I think was stopped with about 15 minutes to go. I think I'm right in saying it was about 1984.
Okay.
But I remember sitting, because I used to sit in the wall, and I could tell you a lot of stories with the managers and all that sort of. But I actually sat and cried that night on the where I sat. I thought that was the end of Cliftonville Football Club. The following Saturday, we played Bangor. Remember this very well. There was 200 people in the ground. But look, I'm a great believer that there's two sides to every story. Some of the things, I mean, John, as I said here, I'm lucky to be alive today. I was in an IRA bomb explosion. I've never done anybody any harm in my life. A car was driven into where I work. The car exploded my second wedding anniversary, and I end up on a trolley in the Royal Victoria Hospital. My wife stand beside me, and my leg broken in 3 places with other injuries. So, but it never changed me as a person. It honestly never made me in any way better. Because it's so many friends. I still don't know why a lot of these atrocities happen. But atrocities happen on both sides. You know, that's why I'm very critical of politicians, and I am to this day, because some of them, to me, they can't see there were two sides involved here. There's two sides of the story. Now, it shouldn't have happened. We all accept that things like that, taking people's lives, it's just not worth it. But it was horrendous times at Cliftonville. I mean, gates were down. I remember we had to launch the appeal, and we had to find £40,000, or there were boats would have won the door, I'm told, within 3 months. And I remember at that time running shows in the Strand Theatre, the Arts Theatre, with people who you probably wouldn't know before your time. No, but seriously, like Dickie Rock and Red Hurley appeared for the Eurovision song, and we actually raised that money. Linfield, who we talk about, Linfield supporters took members' tickets out at Cliftonville. Other people did it as well, and you know, we actually managed to raise that money to keep the club alive. Billy Sinclair was a manager at that time, great fella. Sadly, and the dinner that I'm running on behalf of dementia and Alzheimer's, Billy was there for 8 years, and sadly to this day he still doesn't know that his wife died 2 years ago on Christmas Day. He's in a home, and it's so sad. A lot of these people that this terrible illness affects. But no, there were difficult days, but I was determined. I mean, some of the names was called, I was spat at, various things happened. But to be honest with you, Cliftonville was my life. It was there. I've been there since I was 7. I wasn't going to go. I wasn't going to leave it. And I'd be honest with you, when I came home, I never brought problems home with me. I tried to keep my home life and my wife and my 2 daughters separate from it. And I can honestly sit here and say to you, to the best of my knowledge, Johnny, I'm saying, nobody at Cliftonville's ever said a bad word either to me or about me. I have never had anything but respect. The people still stand and have a chat with me, get into the ground, and that's the way I want it. And
the way it should be.
I can honestly say that, yes. The way, and it's nice of you to say the way it should be. Yes, it is. But I'm gonna transgress a wee bit and just tell you a story. There's this man and these 2 young lads who come from I didn't know where they came from, but they actually come from Downpatrick. And they do a wee video, which they put on YouTube.
Okay.
And they asked me this day would just have say a few words to them. I said, yeah, with a pleasure. So I did it, and the next morning I got a lovely thank you from them, thanking me for doing it. About 2 weeks after that, it would come to the match, I got an email asking me, would there be any chance of me going down and presenting the prizes to the Celtic Boys Youth Club in Downpatrick, under 8s up to under 14s. I said, no problem. I explained the situation with my wife, sadly, with the Alzheimer's. You give me the date, and if God spares me, I'll be there. It was probably the most horrendous weather day we had in June. It was a day of the floods, but I went. And there were 400 people at that presentation. I couldn't believe the amount of people that there were. It's at a Gaelic club, actually.
Right.
And I got a reception that I have to be honest with you, you say the way it should be. But I said a few words and I talked about bringing people together. There was something always in my life that I wanted to see happening. And hopefully things were starting to change in this country. But we had a lovely wee presentation. I got a lovely email thanking me for coming down. But on the way home, Johnny, it was a horrendous day, and I have a carer who was into Hazel between 5 and 7 every night. And I called in the Stormont Hotel. And I had a cup of coffee and a scone, and this man who I recognised came over and said, Jim, I'm getting that. I said, no, I've already got it, because in the Stormont you sort of pay for your coffee and scone before you eat it. And he turned around and he said to me, I'm Jim Magilton's best friend. He said, I'll play 6-a-side with Jim every Tuesday night.
Okay.
He says he thinks a lot of you. He talks. I said, well, Jim and I go back a long time. I said, Cliftonville are lucky to have him. And I said, it's funny. Eamon Elliott was his name. And I says, funny, Eamon. I said, I'll be at Cliftonville, God spares me. It started season 75 years. And he looked at me, just like you and I are looking at each other. He says, what? 75 years? He says, you should have a dinner. Now, I honestly, Johnny, had as much intention of having a dinner as I had of flying with the moon.
Okay. Right.
He says, you should have a dinner. He says, 75 years at one club is a long. Look at the people you know. Look at what you've done in your life. He says, you should have a dinner. Well, we finished our conversation. I went home, and that night and the following day, I thought of Hazel with the Alzheimer's. I thought of my brother-in-law. I thought of people like Sinky and other footballers who are suffering this terrible disease. And I thought, I wonder would it work? And I rang Jim. And Jim said, hold on. He says, I think you should. But he says, I ain't going to ring Eamon. He said, I'll ring Eamon and he'll come back to you. So I went up to Stormont and I saw Eamon. And we discussed it. And I said, look, I want everything, all profits after I pay the hotel or whatever, to go to dementia and Alzheimer's. And he sorted a very good deal out for me with the hotel. And I started just myself sending out emails or, texts or something to people. Johnny, I can honestly say to you, I haven't had one refusal. And the nice thing about it is people like Sir David Richards that I mentioned, David Gill, who was former chief executive of Manchester United and then took over from me as Vice President of FIFA. Players like Martin O'Neill, Pat Jennings, Jerry Armstrong, they're all coming, and I'm very grateful. Plus, Barry Johnson, who's a very good friend of mine, and Barry was, he's one of the inspirations with George McMullen when we won those 2 leagues under Tommy, who was a great person. Barry has organised 3 tables of Cliftonville players, ex-players are going to dinner, and now it's completely sold out, and I can't believe it. I'm very, very humbled, but I'm very honoured the fact that it is sold out, and hopefully Alzheimer's are aware of it, and it would hopefully make, maybe when the expenses are paid, between £6,000 to £10,000, I would hope to give to Alzheimer's. But that's how it happened. It was just.
It was coincidence. It was supposed to be.
Oh, if I hadn't gone into Stormont, I wouldn't even have thought about it. It was Eamon said to me, Jim. So Joel Taggart, who's again, known for many years, all the press, I have a great relationship with Johnny, which I've always tried to be open and honest with them if they ask me something. And Joel's going to do the This Is Your Life part. So
fantastic.
I'm looking forward to it, and it's very nice that so many people are recognising. 4 people are coming from Malta, for example. Okay. Sean Strang, who you probably knew the name. Sean Strang played for Cliftonville the year before. Well, he played the 2 or 3 years before we actually won the league. He has 2 major dental practices now in Australia.
Okay.
I got in touch with him. He sent
over.
He sent me a photograph with flight. He said, I wouldn't miss this for the world. So he's coming from Australia. But things like that, it's very nice.
It's a very good way to accommodate the recognition that people have for you. In terms of 75 years of service at one club, it's extraordinary. For someone like most people will never ever get anywhere close to the milestone, never mind.
No, people said to me, funny enough, when things were hot, for want of a better word, I said, no. I said, nobody has ever said a bad word, as I said to you, at Cliftonville Football Club about me. It's my club, and I'll be there to scatter my ashes. And
you could be selling this thing out 2 or 3 times over, Jim.
Well, it's funny. Brian Campbell, you know Johnny Campbell, who's a doctor at Cliftonville, great fella. Brian looks after the jerseys and
the kits and stuff.
Whenever you re-sign for Cliftonville, he'll give you a number in the back. But funny enough, Brian and Amanda, who's one of the girls who looks after the ladies' team, they're very, very successful. They're going to help me with it. And Brian, a throwaway line, asked him, would he give me a wee bit of hand when it comes? He says, Jim, a number of people, you should have booked the Waterfront Hall and that's dinner. But I sort of laughed at him. But the response has been terrific, and I'm now sadly having to say to people, look, I'm sorry, because the Stormont can't take any more.
You're turning people away at this stage.
I'm turning people away.
The good thing is you didn't turn me away, Jim.
What?
I'm able to have this fantastic conversation with you, and I appreciate that. But
no problem.
I think what you're doing is very commendable. Trying to raise money for something that's so close to your heart.
I mentioned a few people today, but it's very nice that David Jeffrey, David's going to say a few words. Gerard Lawler's obviously going to say a few words. Stephen Beacom and Howard Wells, who was chief executive, as you know, when I was at the IFA. He's coming over from England, so hopefully it'll be a good night. And what really has pleased me, I mean, this is an unbelievable story. The girl, Carly Pauley, who sang the anthems before the Germany.
Just recently?
Northern Ireland match.
Yeah.
I mean, David Campbell and I go back a long time, and it was me actually who got the World Cup to come to Northern Ireland. When it never left, it wasn't allowed to leave FIFA headquarters in Zurich. This is the original World Cup. And a chap called Walter de Grego and I brought it back in the British Airways plane, and was in the boot of my car for 2 days. And unbelievable story. And you could only lift the World Cup if you wore white gloves. But anyway, David and Lorraine are very friendly with this singer, Carly, who sings with Bocelli and Placido Domingo and you name it. And I had breakfast with them 2 Sundays ago, the night before she sang. And David said to me she'd like to come down and sing a few songs for Hazel, as my wife.
Amazing.
And I thought, what? He said, yeah, we're going back at 5:30 flight or something. David and Lorraine would have called to see Hazel because they knew her. And she said, Jim, I want to come and sing at this dinner. No, she says, I'm definitely coming. I want to come. And I mean, the amount of hits and the amount of people that have mentioned to me, not only about the match, but about her singing that, it was just incredible. So I've got Club Sound, which is great. The James Peake Band, that your friend Liam Beckett says is brilliant. So Liam, of course, will be there. And hopefully it'll be a good night.
It'll be a night not to be missed.
Hopefully it'll be a good night.
And I hope that the proceeds are way above what you expect to get.
I'm not having. I've been to too many of these things. To be honest with you, Johnny, it's smart casual. I'm not having it formal, and I'm not having these fleecing of auctions. And what I'll basically do is I'll get 6, hopefully very good prizes, put an envelope on the table. If somebody wants to put £1 and I want it, and all of that will go to Alzheimer's. And
what date is this going to?
It's Sunday, the 22nd of March.
March. Okay.
Of what's very next year.
Hopefully, plenty of time to do a massive build up towards it. And
well, to be fair, the press. I mean, Stephen has done a couple of lovely articles for me, and in the Telegraph. Liam Beckett did one as well, in the Sunday Life, and I really, it's not that I need to sort of promote the thing anymore because I can't. But no, it's nice that people think of you that way.
Well, listen, I don't know a better way to finish a podcast than the end of like that. I feel like it's probably the best way for anyone to commend you in one way, but for what you're doing and what you're trying to do, it's incredible. So I feel like trying to promote that, if there's anything that we can do to get it out on the socials, if anybody wants to donate, or if there's going to be some sort of links,
well, it's funny.
Closer to that.
It's funny. I met a chap yesterday who can't genuinely, because he's away on a cruise, can't go. And he gave me a cheque. Now, I haven't even thought of I'm going to open a separate bank account for a charity, but he actually gave me a cheque. And he says, Jim, there were people like me who can't go, but they want to donate for what you're doing. And obviously, if somebody did want to do that, it'll go to Alzheimer's. And, obviously, I would be very grateful. But you're right. I think there'll probably be several people like that who aren't going to the dinner, but they might want to donate to the cause.
Absolutely. And the technology these days, do you know what I mean, Jim? People will be
I'm
able to
afraid it's not one of my strong
click a
points.
button and drop £20 in the
Yeah.
account for you, so it's very easily done.
I'm afraid it's not one of my strong points, but no, it's terrific the way it has taken off, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'm more looking forward, hopefully, to Cliftonville getting 3 points tomorrow.
Well, hopefully. Well, do you know what? I'm just going to put it out there. I'm looking forward to using your contact book, that big black book you have to get all these A-listers in the seat facing me here and providing good podcasts for the future, so I'll be in contact probably most weeks.
Well, I'll give you Michelle Platini's mobile number if you want to have a word with him.
Do you know what I mean? I could get him in here, I could talk to him about the real insights of it all. But no, listen, thank you so much. I am very conscious of your time. I know you have places to be today, and as I say, it's been so enjoyable to dig into what it's like to...
Johnny, it's been a pleasure.
I'll be finished on hugs. Hugs. So you have to come up and give me a big hug here before we go.
Ha! I'll give you more than a hug.
Jimbo,
thank you. It's been my absolute pleasure, and thank you very much for asking. No, I do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Join us next week on the On The Spot Football Podcast for yet another fantastic guest. We've went from one Cliftonville legend last week to undoubtedly another very recent Cliftonville legend. He's been a captain, he's been in England, he was a winger. Do you know who it is? See you soon.